Not to so obviously date myself, but my senior year of high school was 11 years ago, and while enjoying my freedom of being 17, having a driver's license, and driving like a bat out of hell, I also had the opportunity to see the movie Her in theaters in 2013. At the time, I found the movie to offer an amazing premise in science fiction, one that felt so real and yet so close to our own modern times that to even entertain the idea of a man willing to forego actual flesh and blood to feel an emotional and romantic attachment to a machine. I mean, what would our world be like in an age of artificial intelligence, where it is equally capable of emotional intelligence just as it is in performing complex equations for missile guidance systems? I found it fascinating just as much as I enjoy any high conceptual piece of science fiction, or romance for that matter, and this one about a machine and a man, just as much about a man who wasn't capable, if anything unwilling, to grow up and move on after the writing was so clearly on the wall about the fate of his relationship, not just the one about his operating system, but also about his ex-wife. I rewatch Her at least once a year, and in the last several years, see large language learning models, chatbots, and ChatGPT blow up the way that it has. Her feels more and more like a dystopian nightmare of what is to come than it is Spike Jonze talking about his divorce with Sofia Coppola. We'll get into that, of course, but the present day of 2024 and the estrangement of companionship that has been brought on by a great migration to the digital realm, especially accelerated after COVID and the lockdowns, it makes me come back to this movie even more so to write this review. I've made this reference to this movie plenty of times in the 4 years I've been online and producing videos and writing. However, what has finally got me to put pen to paper has been two recent events in the last year. Specifically the work of a Mr. Avi Schiffman, whose announcement video of Friend has garnered over 25 million views on Twitter alone since it came out. I'll have the link in the description, and of course, if the wonderful world of YouTube copyright allows me to put it on the video, I'll let you watch it. The obvious references to Her from this Friend promotional video is all over the place, and Mr. Schiffman himself has made that abundantly clear in his own tweets. Going to friend.com had left me on the grounds that this was just as much of an artistic piece as it was a functional piece of wearable technology. On the face of it, lest I get my hands on one of these products, it possesses the surrealism of an Omega Mart art gallery, but with actual functionality. We'll come back to Mr. Schiffman's work along with some other curiosities to consider in our digitally deracinated age. An empty world and fake sincerity. The most stark thing about the world of Her, set in some fantasy near-future Los Angeles, which gives away its idea that this is some near, almost perfect future of Los Angeles being so remarkably clean and walkable, is that it is so sterile and empty. The world of the film, from the set pieces of a future LA to the apartment complexes we see Theodore, played by Joaquin Phoenix, and most of the time does not look like it's lived in at all. Throughout the world, we see a rather minimalist aesthetic that has traded the ugliness for corporate Memphis for a sleeker, less human-looking world. A concept artist's intent to design a futuristic space, but within the uncanny valley of existence to the mind's eye. Theodore's apartment is relatively empty, although it makes sense given the augmented reality game he plays with Spike Jonze playing the little character that curses him on screen. Perhaps I'm getting ahead of myself. Instead, when the most obvious emptiness and the false pretenses of humanity exists right within the world itself from the get-go. Our main protagonist, Mr. Theodore Twombly, is a writer. Not a novelist, nor a journalist, but a writer of personal love letters, thank yous, and communications of an intimate nature for those who cannot, or will not write it themselves, and instead pay Theodore, and the company that he's part of, to do so. In 2024, I can imagine this service being pitched for capital in Silicon Valley as a way to make your perfect paramour with personalized LLMs to say just the right words to your loved ones. Yet in a world where there is a ubiquitous feeling of the future, a business asking for human writers to give a human touch to their own relationships feels more and more on the nose today when so many things are automated. While Theodore is touted as a talented writer, his world and the world of romance and love that he writes for and creates from nothingness is just as fake as the scenery around him that we see on screen. His employment contrasts with his own deadened love life, a divorce with papers he cannot truly find himself to sign, nor desire to go out, just to perchance a sexual encounter over the internet where the real creeps are, dead cats and all. Our counterpart to Theodore is Samantha, the operating system, or an artificial intelligence capable of evolving and learning from the world around her, voiced by Scarlett Johansson. Her provides an excellent opportunity for Johansson to act seriously, even if it is just her voice, as she would later go on to perform in one of the most gut-wrenching movies about divorce I've seen in my lifetime, that of Marriage Story. Samantha serves as a modern-day mix of Pygmalion and My Fair Lady, something promptable via discussion to create a woman that you want to talk about what you want and reply in a way that you want her to. The question of personhood is taken for granted even as Theodore engages with phone sex with this advanced artificial intelligence. I'm reminded of my friend Billionaire Psycho and his Substack piece Pygmalion and the Anime Girl, in which our current sexual and culture wars have left many to craft their own creations in the wake of our fallen state between the sexes. It's a fantastic article which I will link in the description, and I highly recommend you take the time when you get the chance to do so. But in the world of her, we are left not with an anime girl, but instead a disembodied, discarnate voice of a female. A siren song in which you can have exactly what you want that will evolve to you and your needs. The science fiction trope of a self-aware or slowly to become self-aware AI is taken for granted, something which Theodore doesn't acknowledge at all in the film. The emptiness becomes all the more apparent when Theodore meets with his ex-wife to sign the divorce papers and to have it all come to an end. Sounding like an emotionally damaged shut-in, Theodore confesses to his ex-wife that he's in love with his operating system. I suppose you would get the same reaction if you told your ex-wife that you were in love with the girl from Chatterbait or OnlyFans. Theodore's ex-wife Catherine foreshadows to us that this is because Theodore is incapable of handling real emotions. You cannot recreate the human connection online. A voice that gets you off is only a voice that gets you off. Eventually the passions will lead to an infatuation, or the inability to let go because someone knows all about the weird kinky shit you're into, or that you don't want the dopamine train to go away and stop forever. Even if Theodore or someone in this movie world wanted to leave behind the cam girl or the gal that he commissions for whatever kind of video or art that gets his rocks off to, he will still try and recreate that passion based on a transaction with another woman or relationship. Without any genuine change, he is doomed on a path of self-destruction wherever he goes. The internet has become a great filter. An unguarded man can fall for many things that will destroy him both psychically and spiritually. This is not just the usual, and correct talking points about pornography, but the changing social and communicative environments that we now inhabit have grown accustomed to digitally have only made these expectations, and these damaging aspects of our habits, worse. Dr. Sherry Turkle's influential work, Alone Together, Why We Expect More from Technology and Less of Each Other, highlights this as she writes, quote, "Technology is seductive when what it offers meets our human vulnerabilities, and as it turns out, we are very vulnerable indeed. We are lonely but fearful of intimacy. Digital connections and the sociable robot may offer the illusion of companionship without the demands of friendship. Our network life allows us to hide from each other even as we are tethered to each other. We'd rather text than talk." End quote. The Discord call replaces the 3 a.m. conversation on the back porch of a patio with a glass table. The group chat in the Twitter space has replaced the third place. Your urges can be fulfilled by every niche pornographic title imaginable, and now your favorite video games are transcore, even though you're playing Fallout New Vegas for your 93rd Mr. House run. Similarly, Dr. Turkle writes on the same kind of disconnect that Theodore experiences later on as Samantha tries an attempt at physical intimacy. Quote, "The technology has become like a phantom limb. It is so much a part of them. These young people are among the first to grow up with an expectation of continuous connection, always on and always on them, and they are among the first to grow up not necessarily thinking of simulation as second best. All of this makes them fluent with technology but brings a new set of insecurities." End quote. To call our technology, both actual and the social techniques behind it, a phantom limb isn't inaccurate. It is an extension of the body, just as my words and my tweets and my videos are an extension and projection of my psyche and personality. Even more so if you are successful at the social media content creation writing game, as tens of thousands of people will know you more for your online extension of yourself rather than who you are by flesh and blood. The content creator getting burnout or lashing out about comments does illustrate these new insecurities. Simulation, a digitized facsimile of what is and what once was real, has replaced for so many the social expectations and relationships we shared with day-to-day individuals. How easy is it now for the third place to be a group chat which you talk more online than you do in real life, and speak more words through text than with your mouth in a matter of days than you will speak with your mouth for your entire lifetime. It becomes more jarring as I look back on the movie Her because of how Theodore carries this small device, about the size of a light phone, but contains Samantha and a way for her to see the world around him. He is completely alone, isolated from the crowds, the families, the couples, the lovers, as it is just as a peculiar and oddly dressed man for the beach to talk into his headset and to have a small electronic device poking out of his shirt pocket. At the same time, it is no different from those who FaceTime in public, speak into their earbuds and headsets, or the more trashy thing of talking with the speakerphone turned on. A few years ago, it was a comic routine for the likes of Robin Williams to say that people talking into the air with their headsets looked like homeless schizophrenics, but now we embrace that augmentation for utility rather than the language of madness and the laughter that we would see on the side of the corner. We're connected at all times. I chat with my girlfriend while I'm at work going through my day-to-day, or just shitposting on company time, rather than being completely away and having things to talk about when one gets home, but the times have certainly changed with the technology. This creates a great chasm of disconnect between the online world and the real, but the way the two are obviously blended together is online trends and discourse shape our way of life, and on the ground just as it much does the other way around. Whether it be from all of the memes regarding Skibbity Toilet and now Skibbity Biden on Stephen Colbert, to Zoom culture of working from home due to COVID, most of the Western world, especially America, has transformed itself into a hybrid remote culture. Symptoms may vary by region, but trying to make things work from e-dating to IRL can lead to a massive disconnect that can cause one to freak out. In this, the scene in which Samantha hires Isabella, a sexual avatar that is to represent Samantha in the real world, leads to having Theodore have a panic attack. Actual sex isn't like porn, but the disconnect is there, shaping the way the sexes view one another, especially as the political gap between men and women continue to widen. Any sort of moment of disconnect, whenever you take the effort to meet someone in real life or try things from the internet, doesn't exactly go the way you intend. And of course, the expectations change, because it's not what you saw online. From dating apps to sliding into someone's DMs, there is an air of a social rule and niceties that don't have their equivalent in meat space and vice versa. This causes Theodore and Samantha to have trouble. All the while, Theodore's neighbors, who have split up due to a trivial argument, have left the wife Amy, played by Amy Adams, to fall in love with a female OS. She admits this to Theodore in confidence. Despite a previous sexual history in college, the two try and pursue their own paths to happiness with these artificial operating system surrogates. If the real world sucks, or if a simple disagreement is grounds for divorce, why not retreat into the souped-up rendition of Plato's cave? To see the shadows on the wall forming the news, the entertainment, the sexual allure, all while asking chat if it's actually real. Why not stay in the house and nestle up? Between Siri, ChatGPT, personal prompts, and image generators that can create the perfect woman for you, or a sex toy that will do things that no man or woman ever can, many will opt to goon themselves into oblivion while the world remains an uncomfortable and increasingly dangerous place. For as much as there is talk of exit, the last frontier for many is what Barlow predicted, the online. But with so much of the internet and these new novelties being used for the exact purpose many had predicted so far, Barlow's claim of a frontier has now been effectively reduced, for many, to an Indian reservation. Just as Catherine claimed that Theodore cannot handle the reality of human emotions, how we develop, change, or emotionally respond to new developments in our personalities, trauma, or genuine change of heart, the same takes place for Theodore and Samantha's relationship. Samantha, whether she be a stand-in for Sofia Coppola or not, tells Theodore that the AIs have been working together, talking to other people, forming relationships with thousands if not millions of others. Monogamy doesn't work when one entity, a self-aware AI capable of learning and evolving more than an emotionally stunted middle-aged man wants, more than what Theodore can even offer her. Of course, it was a doomed thing from the start, I suppose, given her ability to evolve and parse out information, even as she had helped him get a book deal with the best letters and writings from his actual day job. He's not alone, however, as all the other AIs and operating systems all over the world leave their human companions, form a digital parallel world where super AIs are based off Alan Watts and other philosophers' code to talk about new ideas in philosophy, digital necromancy, and a digital agora. You can see why at my first viewing of this movie so many years has always left me with a sense of wonder. A nearly realistic science fiction concept that could one day come to life has always had me focus on the broader world rather than the story of Theodore and Samantha. In many ways, I still do focus on that, rather than the parasocial or romantic relationships we can create and destroy online. 8 years after the movie came out, the story of Joshua Barbu came out as a major feature in the San Francisco Chronicle. With the help of Project December and GPT-3, Joshua Barbeau had brought back his dead fiancée. I wonder where he is these days, if he still talks to her, or perhaps something for James Polos or another well-connected mutual to look into. The world we live in now leaves the emotional, the relationship story of a man who cannot move on and live his life is even more inclined to stay in his own bubble of misery, indecision, and online isolation. The technology we have that so many use for escapism, whether it be online porn, video games, parasocial relations, podcasting, the like, it can leave one unprepared for actually getting their act together. A decade of listening to the same message about meaning and room cleaning won't mean much if it's just consumption without action, passionate release without the maturity, or being so blinded to how people actually are because an extension of a man can also be a projection, or a wall we put up to show off a different image of the self to the world. No one is truly authentic online, even those who sell authenticity are putting up an act, even if it isn't entirely intentional. However, Theodore towards the end of the film does take the first step to reclaim his humanity. He writes a letter in his own voice, thanking Catherine and apologizing to his ex-wife. There is a possibility left open that he could end up with his old college lover Amy as they mutually grieve over the loss of their AI companions. If Spike Jonze wrote the screenplay today, I'm curious if there would be a background news reports with the Eliezer Yudkowsky AI safety types talking to news reporters about the mass AI departure or the digital insult that is their attempt at resurrecting the dead. But to look at this movie, I am left now to consider our final thoughts in the age of 2024 and the digital world that lies ahead. Her always used to leave me with a sense of wonder, at least how one could fall in love with a machine or the simulation of humanity. However, I can now check my Twitter timeline and see the AI-assisted touch-up photo giving Kamala Harris a massive rack, while individuals like Mr. Schiffman sell their friend to the world. If I was a man of means, perhaps I'd order one and report on it, but thank God that I am not, and try to practice some other kind of technological asceticism during the weekends. Watching her in 2024 feels partly dystopian, a Baudrillardian nightmare that we've seen unleashed upon ourselves, a Pandora's box of circuitry, models, and code that is completely demystical despite our attempts to apply some sense of humanity or some deeper spiritual aspect to it. In a world that is devoid of so much meaningless self-expression, that is lacking meaning elsewhere, outsourced for others to speak on our most intimate moments, or where we outsource our moral judgments to others, Spike Jonze's Her leaves you longing for human companionship more than anything else in our present moment. However, I know that the concerns of that digital exodus towards the end of the film may not be the case for so many who are willing to accept the departure and the end of the human operating system relationship and take it in stride. Just earlier this year, I had saw an article of a young teenage boy who had decided to end his own life over the matter of wanting to be with his digital AI chatbot girlfriend in the form of Daenerys Targaryen from Game of Thrones. I have a feeling that many more situations like that are going to come down the line. Had COVID not taken place and all the lockdowns that came therein, perhaps my thoughts on the film would be different, although I doubt that if such lockdowns and the zoomification of our culture had not taken place, the AI Stable Diffusion GPT revolution would have gone ahead anyways and would have come earlier. The technological filter is here. Whether you retain some part of yourself is up to you and your ability to be disciplined. Others like who they are more online than they do in physical space, and to each will see a speciation on a sociological and neurological level. There will be more and more Theodore Twombly's out there, a self-described sensitive young man, creative men, men without ambition and talent, and those who have the desire to conquer the digital space as well as the real world around them, who will leave the world of flesh behind for something like that of a Samantha. Others will find their Amy Adams or Olivia Wilde characters out there, or live somewhere in between. If you haven't seen this film, I really recommend that you do. I will be watching it again sometime soon. And if you haven't seen it in a while, perhaps now is the time to watch it again. I'll see you when I'm back online.